All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Governing Board. The time is 7:14. Let the record show that all 5 board members are present. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ordway? Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. And I will need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. The agenda has been adopted. So we will start off with our annual organizational meeting, election of board officers. I would actually like to start off with a nomination for Mrs. Ann Ordway. Mrs. Ordway is the longest serving board member on our board. And I did, as board president, you have the opportunity to see board members from various perspectives. One thing I personally appreciated about Mrs. Ordway is that she was always willing to reach out to me if we had a miscommunication or misunderstanding. She also was a board member who reached out to me with positive feedback and encouragement, and I appreciated that.
Second.
I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay. That carries 5-0, and with that, I will pass the gavel to Mrs. Ordway.
Oh. Oh. Well, I would like to nominate Mrs. O'Brien for Vice President.
I second.
Before we vote, I did have a question for Mrs. O'Brien. I know that last year when we voted on officers, you had a concern. It was important to you. You indicated that it was important to you that all viewpoints be represented, and you asked me how I would accomplish that. And so I would ask you the same question this year, as you and Mrs. Ordway are to be officers of the board.
How I will accomplish making sure that all viewpoints are heard. I think that I have an open door policy, and I work well with all people in our school district as well as our community members. I know that as a board member, I reached out to both you and Mrs. Tweedy when you were first elected, as well as along the way when I thought it was appropriate, and we hit a couple of rough patches. And we've communicated via, email when appropriate. It is sometimes hard with a 5-person board member, and you can only discuss things
Correct.
with one other person during open meeting. So I always listen very carefully to everybody up here at the dais. So I would continue to do that, and I'm always open to feedback from everybody.
So I'd like to thank you for your response. I half-jokingly last year called this the Deer Valley edition of Game of Thrones. And, I did think a lot about, who would be nominated, possibly be nominated, and how this would go. And I know that the two of you voted against me last year as board president, did not express confidence. I will not do that to another board member this year, because it's my hope that that we will be able to put that behind us and move forward and work together. So I will support your nomination for vice president, and I just wanted to explain my thoughts and behind that.
I do appreciate the explanation, and you are right. I did vote no last year because I felt that we had a much more divisive situation a year ago. And I'm very hopeful that this board is the beginning of a new era for Deer Valley, and that we will proceed forward in a positive manner. So thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I'm
Oh.
used to saying I'll call for
I
the
was just
vote,
waiting
so
for you to
I'm
say
so
it.
sorry, Mrs. Ordway. If I step on your toes, it's going to take
Can't
me.
step on my toes tonight. They're hidden.
Well, that's you're all the way at the end,
Yeah.
but
So
I
I'm going to call
my
for the
job
vote.
for the
All
vote.
those in favor?
aye.
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 We've all said aye. Passes.
You
Passes
vote on mine
five.
too, though.
Already did.
Did we do that for president and I missed it?
We entered it for you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Taylor.
It'll take us a while probably to get the technology rolling.
So can I
Thank
sit
you,
back
Mrs.
and
Tweedy.
relax now for the rest of the meeting?
Good. Nice. Bring your knitting.
It's the ASBA appointment.
That's right. We have to do our ASBA delegate. So would somebody like to nominate somebody, please?
I'd like to nominate Julie Reed for delegate, ASBA delegate.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Good. Let's call for the vote. Or let's vote on who we're approving. Everyone?
Aye.
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 So I guess we'll move on to governing board reports. And we'll start on that side, Jenny.
You get to be last. Now Jenny gets a start.
Okay. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone back. I'd like to welcome all of my fellow board members back, and a special welcome to Mrs. Julie Reed, our newly elected member of the board. Ms. O'Brien, of course, is reelected, so welcome. And in the spirit of no news is good news, that's it for my report.
Ms. Tweedy. Thank you, Dr. Fent.
I had planned on saying exactly the same thing Miss Frank said, so congratulations, Miss Reed, and congratulations on your re-election, and welcome back, everyone.
Julie, do you want to say something, Ms. Reed?
Sure. Thank you so much for the warm welcome, and to the district for the reception tonight. It was wonderful. Thank you to the voters and community members and parents and teachers who supported the campaign and cast their vote for me. I really appreciate your confidence. I'm excited to serve for Deer Valley. I'm looking forward to working with all of our teachers. I'm looking forward to campus visits so I can see what makes your school and your community special and unique. I'm looking forward to interacting with our students and seeing the excitement that they have and how much they love Deer Valley. And I'm looking forward to working with different district staff to understand what they do and the value that they add into our district and the daily operations. I did have an opportunity to spend some time in December helping out some of our Title I schools, and it was amazing to see the amount of work that our Title I teachers and administrators put into making sure that their kids have a good Christmas and a good holiday, and that they receive Christmas presents. So I just want to applaud you for all that you do to make sure that your kids are well taken care of, and not just your students, but also their siblings who may not be in Deer Valley, and their parents. So we help to provide gifts for entire families And then I was at Constitution for their holiday party, and it was amazing. So kudos to the Constitution staff for everything that you do to make your school amazing. And it was so wonderful to see the hundreds of students with the smiles on their faces, how excited they were because Santa Claus was there giving out presents, and because the teachers and the staff went above and beyond to make that day really special. So thank you again.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. Welcome back to everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed their holidays and was able to relax. Also, welcome to Mrs. Reed, our newest board member. I had an opportunity to attend the Arizona School Board Association annual conference in December. And I only got to go to the pre-conference, but it was a packed day regarding the demographics of Arizona children now and the future. There was a couple of key points in there that I'll share a little bit later when we're talking about an agenda item. But we also got to talk about childhood well-being in Arizona, and some monies that Arizona is leaving on the federal money that Arizona seems to be leaving on the table for healthcare for our kiddos. So I have some questions about that. The other thing is, that we talked about was the plurals generation and what that means for our schools, and what kind of kiddos we have in our schools right now. Another topic was a panel, and there was a conversation with school nurses, psychologists, and social workers. One of the things they asked is, what is one thing board members can do to help students? And I thought the most provocative one was shifting that mindset and being cognizant of what kids come to school dealing with. Their social emotional learning, mental health, and school environment are vital prerequisites to learning and academic success. We also got to talk about the biology of adverse childhood experiences and how that really does affect our kiddos, so that when our teachers are dealing with those kids, there's so much more that they have, they see the teacher in a different way. So kudos to ASBA for the education that they provide all year round. So I do appreciate that. I'd also like to thank Dr. Hesse. I was able to participate in judging the Sandra Day O'Connor High School student wellness activity teams, and they had some presentations. It's a semester-long project, and the some of the presentations were a website with nutritional information for our students and student athletes. We also had a community canned food drive where they actually reached out to their community members, not the kids in school, but they went out into their neighborhoods and to businesses. And then the other one was a Bloom 365, which is about health and safe relationships for all. So kudos to Dr. Hussey for having them do a semester-long project around how they can give back to their community. I really appreciate that. And I'd like to ditto Mrs. Reed's comment on thanking our schools, our staff, and our community members and business partners who helped provide clothes, toys, toiletries, foods to our Deer Valley families in need this holiday. I know that we were able to impact Constitution, Deer Valley Middle School, Desert Sky Middle School, and Esperanza as well. This morning, I won't steal all of his thunder, but Dr. Finch presented at a press conference. Senator Carter introduced Senate Bill 1009, which is tobacco products, electronic smoking devices. This is a serious epidemic for our young people. They think they're doing something that is not harmful to their themselves, and we all know that tobacco is a terrible product for all of us, not just our kiddos, but it is scary to think that they are using devices and think it's not a big deal. And my last plug is going to be that there are already 64 bills registered and online with the Arizona legislature. So, and many of them are related to education. So if you're wondering what your legislators want to do surrounding education, I highly encourage you to go out there and read those bills. There's some very interesting reading out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So, thank you very much, Mrs. Frank. I was not expecting your nomination, but I appreciate it. So, with all the things that we talked about, our community's doing for our kids, it's really important when we have the time off, whether it be this winter break or spring break, that there are not only children, but staff in our schools that do not look forward to it like the rest of us look forward to it. For some of the kids, it's kind of 2 weeks of torture because they don't know who's feeding them, they don't know when they're getting fed, they don't know who's coming home. So when we do these things at our different schools, and it's not just our Title I schools that have these children, that when we think about them and we think about some of the messages and the parties and that, it's really good to know that our community does reach out and remember that. Welcome, Mrs. Reed, to the board. It's awesome. I think we're going to have a great year. We're going to be putting our students kind of in the middle, just like that IB showed you. So with that, Dr. Finch, I know that you were at that news conference, and when you're done, if we could get either an electronic copy of the bill sent to us, that would be awesome, so we could read it and start having some thoughts about having a session about that. Pardon me? Oh, and your statement also. I didn't mean not to.
No
say
charge.
that. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
we
was,
pay you, but okay.
Yeah, the press conference, Ms. Carter called me, or Senator-elect Carter called me in the middle of break there and wanted to know if I would contribute to it. And it turns out there were several educators that were there, superintendents, and so it was a great honor to do that with her. It was all around vaping and all the trickery that's coming with it from that industry. As you know or have seen or have heard, a lot of disguising of the vaping pens to make them look like thumb drives, for example, or putting waxes and THC waxes or oils in these pens. And so I think it's time, and I think Heather has talked about it years before, but I think it's time to start doing something about it. It's becoming an epidemic. The FDA is, I believe the FDA or CDC said that it is, quote unquote, an epidemic at the high school level. I pulled some stats for us. We put that vaping in the category of tobacco, and so that's how we keep track of it. And we're already at 287 incidences this year around vaping, and so that's not good because you get 3-day suspension just to start out. So that's 861 days that students have missed already. So we need to get together as a community and as a school board and as a state to start regulating this. And I think she's on the right path. Putting it with tobacco puts a bunch of fences around it. So I'm looking forward to helping her with that. So that was a good job today. And I'm sure it'll be online if you want to take a peek at that conference. I know she had it on her Facebook page if you want to watch the whole thing. A couple things from in the news department. We did, Mr. Migliorino and myself just got done it was right before break. So we went downtown and met with the godfather of all streetlights. Got a blessing on putting a light for our bus transportation. So that's cool. That's a big deal. I think it's been, 20 years we've been trying to get one there. So it's good that we finally got the blessing. We'll start working on that with our architects, and if all things come together, hopefully we'll have it in before fall, and then the bus drivers will be able to get out of that, I call it the Frogger section. Maybe these people are too young, they don't know what Frogger is, but it's a video game. And so they dodge cars with those big buses, so it's good to get that done.
It's too bad that wasn't one of your superintendent's goals.
Yeah, we probably didn't think we could do it, but we finally got it. So that's pretty exciting. Looking forward to that, and we'll keep you posted on how that progresses in the future. And the last thing I want to mention, I will be putting out it's kind of like a state of the state or state of the nation. I call it the state of the school district or state of DVUSD, a summary of the last 18 months. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I didn't do it this last year when I only had been here for 6 months. So I'm going to do an 18th month look back, hopefully, between the state of the state and the state of the nation addresses. And it's to be used to shine back on what the things that we've done well, and then kind of project into the future. So that'll be coming. Once I've said it publicly, that means I have to do my homework. So I'm on it. Started writing it today, and it'll take a bit to do that, but I'll get it done. In that document, I'm also going to provide a link to, and I think you have seen it. I have a charter paper about accountability and transparency for the charter movement in our state. I've given it to the governor, to the legislators, and I've got Craig Harris from the Republic as well. So I think our charters need some fences around them as well. It took us about a decade in Michigan to bring them back into the fold where they're accountable to the taxpayers. So looking forward to working on that project. I'm assuming that's also a 10-year project. So we'll get started on that. And lastly, I want to thank Ms. Frank and Ms. Tweedy, too, for their leadership as the president and vice president. You guys did a good job, dynamic duo. And I appreciate Ms. Frank's humor, so you're allowed to jump in and throw us a joke once in a while if you'd like. No charge.
With Mrs. Ordway's permission.
With Ms.
of
Ward's
course.
profession. Yeah.
Ooh.
That's it. Thank you.
Well, the last time anyone asked me permission for something, but okay. So are you finished?
We have 2 public comments. I don't know if you want me to
Yeah.
take it from here, or do you want me to hand them down to you, or what would you like?
Just do it over there, but
Okay.
I think we have a new voice to read. Yay. Right, Dorsey?
Are you calling the names first, or are they speaking now or at agenda items?
Yeah.
Now. Okay.
So why don't you, start out with okay.
The board invites public comment on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. To accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten speakers' times. Vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting employees by name will not be allowed. The governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism, ask staff to review matter, or request a future agenda item.
Marshall Militano and Sarah Eagleton. Don't forget to say your name, please.
My name is Marshall Militano. I've worked in transportation for over 14 years. Welcome Ann Ordway as our new president, board members, Dr. Finch, distinguished guests. Last spring, I stood before this body bringing you concerns regarding bus driver shortage. My closing question was, what is the plan? Yes, there have been changes, not for good. Instead of being down 40 plus bus drivers, we are now down 50 plus bus drivers. Is it fiscally responsible to be outsourcing transportation routes, activities, and athletic trips to the tune of $500,000? Wouldn't it serve the community better to invest in our own employees, their recruitment and retention? Neighboring districts their starting pay for drivers is at least $1 more and as much as $2.50. Persons who could make a difference for transportation have said, money is not the issue. My response to that is, how would you know? You haven't tried it. The district has spent $750,000 on marquees. Why aren't they being used to advertise the need for bus drivers? I've asked this question now for several years. The response? Crickets. Why aren't we using recruiting agencies and websites? There are dozens of them. Other districts do. I've checked them out. They're there. Why aren't we being innovative as some of our neighboring districts? They're offering a 26-week pay schedule. Teachers have this in place. Why can't transportation? Safety is one of the most essential strategic goals in transportation. We are informed by DPS that our bus inspection failure rate has increased. Drivers are having extra routes added to their duties, which increase the workday by hours, causing more fatigue and stress. As a parent, I would be deeply concerned. Drivers are expected at a moment's notice to cover unfamiliar routes. Perhaps they are picking up kindergarten children that have never seen. The kinder ID cards are held by the original driver. The cover driver is expected to drop these young children to the correct stop to the correct parent or guardian. How comfortable is that for the child or driver? As a parent, I would be deeply concerned. On any given day while driving, a supervisor may need to give directions to another driver who's covering an unfamiliar route. Those directions are relayed over a two-way radio. How safe is that? I simply depart asking the board and our district office why Deer Valley Unified School District is not the innovator, the leader, the best in every category. We could be. Let's be the star, not the stargazer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marshall.
Hi, my name is Sarah Eagleton. I have a first grader at Norterra Canyon and 2 more children going through the system. Deer Valley holds a special place in my heart. I went to Deer Valley through kindergarten and graduated from Goldwater. I went on to become a teacher and taught at Village Meadows and at Mirage. The decision tonight is an important one. Deer Valley continues to lose funding because parents are choosing schools outside of our district. Where I live in my cul-de-sac alone, we have children going to 5 different schools. The sense of community is gone, and the connection to our neighborhood school is gone. Another charter school will be detrimental to our district, pulling kids from all neighboring Deer Valley schools. A new school will alleviate current and future overcrowding, and will bring revenue to our district. I know each of you treasure Deer Valley as much as I do. Please have some foresight before it's too late. In order to support the growth in North Phoenix, we owe it to my child's school, to our community, to our district, to our families, and to our future to approve a new school in Union Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move to 6A, which is old business, approve Union Park land exchange agreement. It's okay.
Sorry, I forgot I had a job right now.
Another job.
Another job. I move to approve a land exchange agreement with USRELP for the exchange of land near 43rd Avenue and Alameda for a parcel in the Union Park community, and authorize Mr. Jim Miglerino to execute all necessary documents to effectuate the agreement.
Discussion? Oh, a second, sorry. Are you going to second? No.
I second.
Okay, so discussion? Judy?
You want Mr. Miglerino to do his PowerPoint first?
Oh,
Get with the
Sure,
information?
Jim. You got stuff for us?
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and I don't know how much time we want to spend on the background information. I provided all of it in the board packet for the benefit of our newest board member, we spent. I have personally, and Dr. Finch have spent a great deal of time regarding this particular agreement, and I think, just for the benefit of maybe those in the audience, I'll try and be brief, but I'll go through the information as quickly as possible. So USAA purchased a whole section of land back in 1999, and their thoughts were they were going to build and replace their Sacramento campus with a campus here in Phoenix. USAA has grown. Make a long story short, they've keeping the Sacramento operation in place. They've built and expanded the Phoenix location, but intend not to expand it any longer, and want to divest themselves of the rest of the balance of the section of land that they purchased. They are the owner of the land and are developing it to get a return on their investment from their original purchase, and as such, they are they've partnered with 3 home builders to actually build homes on the balance of the land, and a development that's being referred to as Union Park. As part of the rezoning process, we did initially object to the fact that there wasn't a school site in this 1,200 single-family resident development, and we were able to we weren't objecting to the rezoning application per se. We were objecting to the fact that there wasn't a plan or provision in the plan to address the need that's going to be created from all of the students that are projected from the home sales. So we did get a provision in the rezoning application through the city for at least what I'll refer to as kind of like the first right of refusal to have a Deer Valley school in this community, and that has a time component of it that gave us 18 months to reach that agreement. That clock started based on the language that was approved by the City of Phoenix back in July of 2017, and that 18-month clock actually expires on January 11th of 2019, so just a couple days from today. At that point in time, they're not obligated to work with the Deer Valley School District, although they have extended an interest to work with us in the event that more time might be needed. But I think it's suffice to say that they really want a school in that neighborhood to help market selling some homes, and they, at this point in time, although maybe I don't want to speak for them, it may have taken some time for them to warm up to this idea. I think they want a Deer Valley school in their community. So, just real quickly, it is, kind of a mixed-use project with some commercial along the Happy Valley corridor. They do have some additional commercial up closer to Jomax and I-17. But as I mentioned before, 1,200 single-family homes and somewhere in the neighborhood of about 800 multifamily units as part of the design. This is a presentation from information that was shared with the board back last school year. So not much of this has changed. This is kind of just an overview. In the center of this diagram or picture is the actual USAA campus. The colored sections are the developments that they are working on as part of this project, or what they're now referring to as Union Park. This is our demographer's projections from last year's demographer's report, and that is in the process of being updated. We should have additional information from the demographer hopefully in the next month or so. But essentially this shows that we're going to have 1,125 more students in this region in the next 5 years. So that's in addition to the students that we have now, and we really don't have a good plan to be able to know how to address those additional 1,125 students, and that includes, I should note, that does include Union Park residential counts in that projection of students. We don't have a really good plan for how we're going to address that increased number of students, because a lot of this, and much like the Union Park project, have been areas that have been rezoned by the City of Phoenix. So they weren't originally designed to be residential communities, and as such, we don't have any other school sites in this area currently. Right now, that population is being served essentially by two campuses, Norterra Canyon and Sonoran Foothills. A portion of that area, if you go all the way up to Carefree Highway, is being served by Sunset Ridge and Desert Mountain as well. The Esperanza attendance boundary continues all the way up to Jomax currently. So the Union Park school attendance boundary would be Esperanza as it's currently stated. These are the projections again from the demographer's report in terms of each of those schools that I just mentioned. The orange shows those schools that are going to be at or above capacity, and you can see starting in the 2021 year, all three schools, Esperanza, Norterra Canyon, and Sonoran Foothills, will be at or above their capacity. Only Sunset Ridge and Desert Mountain will be below their student capacity, again, in this particular region. So the land exchange agreement, which we have provided to you, it has been massaged over many months, if not years. And what is being proposed is a land exchange, which there is a provision in the law that allows for this to happen, that we have essentially two parcels that we would like to trade USAA for. The two parcels that we have are near 43rd Avenue and Alameda, and constitute about 14 acres worth of land combined. And it's in an area that we will likely not develop as a school, although it was originally purchased with that intent in the late 80s. And it's to give you some proximity, it is kind of wedged between Las Brisas and Desert Sage schools. So there's really not a need for another school in that particular vicinity. So this would divest ourselves of that and then provide us with a parcel in an area, again, that we don't have the means to be able to serve the projected student population in the immediate future. The agreement has the developer creating all the off-site improvements for us, so all the half streets, curb, gutters would be put in adjacent to the land that would become our future school site. We would help them get the Alameda site rezoned so that it could be be sold to a future residential developer. USAA has no interest in developing that parcel; it's too small for them, but there is an interest for others. That would also be a help to us because that would not only add to our assessed valuation, but would likely add some additional students as well in an area where we have the ability to add more students. And the one thing that the agreement does require us to do, it does require us to obligate the 2013 bond authorization to build an elementary school, a K-8 elementary school, on the parcel that we would be gaining. And there are some milestones that are included in the agreement that would state at the 100th home closing we would have to be in design, and at the 200th home closing we would have to begin construction. At that point in time, we would expect to have a considerable number of students in the area so that we wouldn't be building the school prematurely. And as they continue to move through the development process, and it would take us probably, from that 200th home closing milestone, it would take us probably about 12 months to complete the construction of a new school. We would have additional homes that would also help support the opening of a new school. There was quite a bit of discussion previously about the attendance boundary during the time between now and when the new school would open. Originally in the agreement, there was a provision for those students to attend another school other than Esperanza, which is their current school of attendance. And through a great deal of discussion with them and probably about 6 months worth of dialogue, USAA has agreed to leave those students at Esperanza and Deer Valley Middle School until the new school is built, which was, I would like to think of it as an act of good faith on their part to try and help make sure that there wasn't a sticking point in the agreement based on previous conversations and discussions and input from the governing board. We did some pros and cons. I'm just going to skim through these quickly because most of it was covered in the previous information. It really allows us to take and divest ourselves of some land that we probably are not going to develop and maybe make a useful project out of that land for some additional residential development. But it does obligate us to use the 2013 bond authorization, which does have a new elementary school as a provision in what the voters approved. But it would designate those funds for the new school. And there is an expense of operating a school, roughly about $700,000 in additional cost annually to operate an additional campus. So you have utility costs, you have an additional principal, an additional secretary, et cetera, et cetera. But this does also create an opportunity for us to address some student growth, and in an area that we don't have a great plan for to be able to accommodate those students that are being projected currently. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and just let you know that both our attorney and USAA's attorney have jointly developed the agreement that's also in the board packet, that has all the specifics in detail. There are some things in there like we're not going to light the fields, which we typically wouldn't do anyhow at a K-8 school. Some other provisions like that that are contained, and I don't want to gloss over those, but just as the agreement has been approved by their attorney and ours. So I'd be happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Darcy.
Thank you. I actually didn't have any questions. I just was going to express some of my concern. So this summer, I read a report by the Goldwater Institute on district spending. And I think if we're going to try to advocate for new money, we also have to read what people who are thinking we waste our funds are saying. And one of the things they were discussing is the problem with excess capacity. So when we look at capacity of our district and how many students we can hold at the schools in our district, that's based on total student population. And our total student population has remained rather flat for years. I mean, it's gone down a little bit, and it may have rebounded a little, but not very much. And I think we all agree it's been, and within the time of it remaining flat, we've built more schools, which means we have more excess capacity, so we're not operating as efficiently as we could be operating. And that ends up hurting us when we try to do things like maintain programs our students are in, when we try to address things like the bus driver shortage. We're going to be looking, and all districts are going to be looking at a teacher shortage. So when we have excess capacity, so the difference between a boundary problem and a capacity problem would be that our total students have increased. Our total students, we have more students in our whole district, then we can start having a capacity problem, which you would only solve with a new school. But if the total number of students isn't changing, our funding isn't changing either. We're just adding new schools that we have to find the money to maintain. And in this time, construction costs are escalating. When we've done some remodeling and renovation problems at our projects at schools, they're coming in higher. Minimum wage has gone up. Construction costs are going up. And this has a cost to us. And so what we've done traditionally is what we're proposing to do here now. We've overbuilt in the really popular areas of our school, and then those neighborhoods age out, and we end up with a lot of schools right next to each other, and there's not even students to attract. And I went through and I thought about a lot of the arguments for this building. And one of them is, if we don't go there, a charter's going to go there. Well, I'll tell you what. The charter owners are becoming millionaires because they're good businessmen. They're not going to go build a charter school where there's no houses going. There will be a charter in that area whether we build a school or not. So we cannot project how many students we are going to lose based on the assumption if we build a charter, no other school will go there. That's just not going to happen. They're going to go there. They're not going to go build a school where there's no new growth. They wouldn't become millionaires on our dime if they did things that foolish. They don't. So the other thing I considered is, and this board had a discussion a few weeks ago about systemic inequities. Is this something we can do for all students? It does sound compelling. We need a neighborhood school. We don't like busing students. And I thought about it. A district our size could never build enough schools not to bus students, and we know that. We did it. Sonoran Mountain Ranch is the perfect example of this. Nobody built a school in Sonoran Mountain Ranch. Those students do not have a neighborhood school. And even more problematic, they drive by Terramar, they drive by West Wing, and they drive by 2 charter schools on their way to Copper Creek. And we did not we didn't fix that problem for those parents and go build a school up in Sonora Mountain Ranch. They drive over 6 miles to school. Denora Mountain Ranch is further from Copper Creek, and not by much, we're talking a few tenths of a mile, than USAA is from Desert Sage, which is also not at capacity. So, to me, that represents a systemic inequity. Yes, we'll build a school for one community, but we won't do it for other students. Those students are taking the bus. And I have a hard time, to me, I think we as the board, when we do this boundaries, we need to say, what is a reasonable distance for any child in this district to drive or ride a bus, and we need to apply it to all neighborhoods. But we can't build schools in some neighborhoods and then treat other students differently. But in the meantime, if we don't operate, we will be operating less efficiently because our excess capacity will increase, even according to our own projections, which were made before interest rates increased and the real estate market slowed down. But if we look at our own projections, it's 1,025 students over 5 years. So it would, if we're not at capacity on this new school, we've raised our excess capacity. We've given more fodder to the people who don't want to fund public education because they will definitely have more ammo when they want to show how much money public schools are wasting, and you can't argue with facts like that. We will have more excess capacity, we will be less efficient, and we will not be in a position to address a lot of the challenges we have that impact students all over the district. If we had the money, or the state facility board was going to fund it because we actually had a capacity problem, then it would be a different story. They're not funding it because we have the room for our students.
Are you sure? Mrs. O'Brien?
When I attended the annual conference, one of the things they talked about in the demographics was how Madison Elementary School District, and I realize they're closer to downtown and Center Phoenix, but over 50% of their kiddos are open enrolled to their school district because of work. And what is occurring in Deer Valley School District is we are building more workplaces and expanding more places in that corridor. And folks want, if it's not the neighborhood school because Johnny or Susie can walk, then it might be the school that is 2 minutes from where I work, where I drop them off. And I think this provides an opportunity for Deer Valley as new businesses come into the state and come into the city to, especially this corridor. This is the gateway. This is going to be the corridor, the North Phoenix corridor, the gateway to the city. So I think we have to look at a lot of those things. I don't disagree with Mrs. Tweedy that we don't open a school in every neighborhood. This is a unique situation in that there is land available. We need schools there. And I disagree with you that if a charter school goes in there, we just won't lose those students. We will lose current students. There are families who will take their kids to that school, a charter school, and we'll lose those dollars. So those are some of my thoughts on this. And the charter schools are going where the construction is and where the rooftops are. And they have been in Deer Valley. We've had one of the highest saturation rates, I think, of charter schools in our district as compared to some other school districts. So to say that they won't come, I think is they might come either way, but when they have to compete with Deer Valley in the neighborhood in a less desirable location, they might not be as likely to come in that direct area. They might go into a strip mall or some other area, but that is prime prime real estate for a school and families with kids. So,
Ms. Frank?
It depends on the charter, just to address your last comment, Mrs. O'Brien, because if you look at Terramar, Happy Valley Charter School is right next door. We used to get a lot of their kids back. I had a teacher friend who, I probably shouldn't say this, but on live stream used to call them Sad Valley, but I hope that's not going to get us in trouble.
It's not any worse than Carcass. So
Oh, okay. So yeah, the charters will build, and depending on what the charter operator is, it may be a strip mall, it may be a basis, they may have a beautiful building. But yeah, they are going to build regardless of whether or not we build a school. I'd just like to start off with a statement. I'd like to thank both Dr. Finch and Mr. Miglarino for the work that they put into the land exchange. I know you've worked very hard on it. I know you worked very hard to remove the clause that students be bused to another school other than Esperanza. And I'm sure that was quite the discussion. So I do want to express my appreciation for your work on that. I do have a couple questions for Mr. Miglarino, and then some concerns I'd like to voice as well. So what other areas of the district are we seeing like exploding growth that the school in that neighborhood will not be able to accommodate the students?
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, right now we also are seeing quite a bit of growth in the area of 75th Avenue and Jomax. The community is called Alara Vida. They have about 33 homes in that area. It's a master plan community. 2 sections of land there. One section is in our district, one section is in the Peoria Unified School District, and that developer started in our section first. So those 33 homes are currently permitted, ready to go, and in that vicinity, there's another neighborhood next door to it, Rock Springs. So it's in the general vicinity of Terramar, West Wing. We do have a school site in Stetson Valley that is nearby, and we do think that at some point in time that's going to need to be a consideration as well, is to develop an elementary school to be able to accommodate the projected students in that region as well.
Is West Wing currently at capacity or over capacity?
If it's not over capacity, it's at capacity.
Okay, so it would be close. It's at least at capacity. What about Terramar?
Terramar is approaching its capacity,
Okay.
so it's also growing.
Okay. And I did appreciate Ms. Tweedy's reference to Sonoran Mountain Ranch and those students going to Copper Creek, because I taught at Copper Creek, as most of you know, for 9 years. Copper Creek was a school with declining enrollment. They were eliminated, I think one year they eliminated first grade classroom because they had decline in enrollment, and I was teaching 4th grade, so I knew what that meant as the teacher with the least seniority there after 7 years coming up the pike. So when they did the boundary change to move Sonoran Mountain Ranch, if I'm recalling correctly, it was to relieve that overcrowding at Terramar. And there was, some consternation amongst the parents at the beginning. Once everybody settled in, parents were very happy with the atmosphere, the administration at Copper Creek, the quality of the teachers. And it is about 6.5 miles, little over 6.5 miles to bus the students from Sonoran Mountain Ranch to Copper Creek. But it did prevent Copper Creek from becoming an under-enrolled school, because it's in a neighborhood that aged out, and people, their kids grew up, they didn't move on, they stayed in their house. So how will we address that growth in the western boundary? You mentioned that there is a school site, so is it sort of looking to the future, the thought that we might need to build another school?
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, yes. I think, I don't know exactly, the timing of that, but we are having conversations about bringing before the board later this spring the potential to call for another bond election and include another elementary school in that bond election. Typically, when we do our bond plan, it's for at least 5 years, if not a little bit longer. This last bond was a 7-year plan. So sometime within the next 5 years, if we do call for an election, we at least are considering one more additional elementary school.
Okay. So we need to pass another bond to build a school in that area to accommodate all of the students that are projected. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that would be one option. The other option is there are more schools on the in the western area of the district. Again, we only have between essentially the 101 freeway and Carefree Highway on the east side of I-17, we have the three campuses, right? Esperanza, Norterra Canyon, and Sonoran Foothills. In the area, another option to consider would be boundary changes, because we do have more schools in the area that's also growing near 75th Avenue and Joe Max.
So I do have a concern, if you look at the last election, Peoria had a bond and it failed. And we have a very similar voting demographic and a lot of similarities between the two districts. Obviously not identical, but a great deal of similarities. So I do have a concern that we won't, if we don't pass another bond, then what are we going to do with that? And I'm also kind of curious, looking at the distance between Desert Sage and Union Park. It's 6 7/10 of a mile, something like that, according to Google Maps, if you want to believe them. Is Desert Sage at capacity, or do they have room to accommodate students?
I don't have the Desert Sage numbers in front of me, but
Okay.
if you want to continue asking questions, I can answer that.
I'm almost out of questions. I'm sorry. I don't need an exact number. I guess I'm just, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just summarize, some of my concerns. Obviously, I appreciate that you took care of the Esperanza clause, as it was informally called. I do have concerns that if we're not able to pass another bond, we're going to find ourselves in trouble in other areas of the district that are also experiencing a lot of growth. And I think it may be a tough sell when we've spent $8 million on renovating some of our older schools that aren't at capacity to then ask voters for more money for another new school. I can see some problems with that. So I guess that summarizes some of my concerns. I don't want to go on and on and on.
Are you sure?
Positive.
All right. Ms. Reed.
Thank you. I have the opportunity to sit on the North Gateway Village Planning Committee with the City of Phoenix. So I hear all of the rezoning cases that happen. And North Gateway is pretty much north of Joe Max, all the way up to kind of Anthem area. What's happening in North Gateway is a lot of rezoning for residential because of the crash in 2007. So a lot of what was supposed to be businesses or was zoned for corporations is now being rezoned for homes. The other thing that we're seeing is because of the housing prices are so high up in this area, and the rental market is very low for houses, is that there are more students that are living in apartment complexes because parents want to live in this area. So there's more students that are coming out of apartment homes also. The information that I wish I had all of the data in front of me. There was a land auction that just happened with State Trust Land, and 140 acres, and don't quote me on that, but it's right next to Sonoran Foothills School, was just auctioned off to Lennar Homes. So, and that's preliminary. If we go off of the size lots that are around there, it's about 600 more homes directly next to Sonoran Foothills School. We also have rezoning cases for more apartment complexes that are coming through our North Gateway Village Planning Committee over the next couple of months. Several high-end townhomes that have been approved that haven't started building yet. And these are all zoned either for Norterra Canyon or for Sonoran Foothills. So I don't know necessarily if those numbers were in the projection for the approximately 1,200 because of the fact that they were just rezoned after this demographer report or not, but people are choosing to move up to the North Valley. And with what the city of Phoenix is trying to do with North Phoenix is they're marketing it as the next Desert Ridge. So what I don't want to see happen, and what I feel like as a parent being in the district for 17 years, is that our district has a tendency to put Band-Aids on problems. We do Band-Aid solutions to stop the bleeding where it is, and I don't want to do that with this. And Mrs. Tweedy, you have very valid points, and a lot of those points I agree with. What I don't want to do is I don't want to not approve a school because we didn't approve a school in another neighborhood before, a decade ago with a different board. I don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face. I don't want to, in 3 years go, gosh, I really wish we would have built that school because now we don't have a place to put our kids. I'm trying to look at the long-term solution to the growing problem, or not growing problem, but the growing number of students that are choosing to come to Deer Valley schools because their parents are choosing to move to North Phoenix. I do know also that we have a huge portion of the northeastern part of Peoria that is experiencing a lot of growth. And Peoria is doing a huge push to gather families to that area. And I would like to continue to look at that and to see what solutions we could come up with as a district. I'm also concerned about the McEwen 480 project that's coming down the road. McEwen 480, if you aren't aware, is the project that's coming just west of Cave Creek Road off of Dove Valley Road, where Dove Valley Road and Sonoran Desert Drive connect. That's where Sonoran Gate is. And Sonoran Gate is zoned for Sonoran Foothills, and that community is not built out all the way yet. But McEwen 480 is a project that is proposed to be rezoned, and that will be another huge housing project that will have, I think, another 1,200 homes that are going in, and that is also zoned for Deer Valley. The City of Phoenix also announced in November that Sonoran Desert Drive will now loop around and connect to 64th Street eventually and the 101. So that is supposed to be a main pass corridor, and all of that land off of Sonoran Desert Drive east is all zoned for residential. So I don't know when that's going to happen, but I know that if we already have 2 housing communities that are coming in, more are going to start to follow, and I don't want to not be prepared for the growth that's happening in North Phoenix.
Thank you. Jim, along with the residential, the businesses that are there, how many insurance companies have relocated in that spot? Is it Chubb? And I think there's like 4
Chubb's
of
is
them?
there. Farmers just doubled the size of their last building. That's happening today. State Farm is in the neighborhood. So I think there's 3, maybe 4.
And plus, with the Union Park being built out, there's going to be shops and businesses. More the corporations, though, are going to also take their kids to work and leave them at the school, because that is something that USAA talks about. Not everyone's going to live in Union Park, but they are going to still work there. So I think that in addition to the students that will be in the residential area, you'll have those that are going to be there from employment. So does anyone else have anything they want to say? Jim? Dr. Finch?
I just want to add, I appreciate the conversation around it, and that's what you want from a good board. You want to have debate. You want to turn over all the rocks you can. And as Ms. Frank alluded to earlier, it took us really 6 months to move the Esperanza clause out of that. We had to get to the developer and help them realize what we're trying to do. As a district, we are one of the best districts in the state of Arizona. 95% of our schools are an A or B, and there are 16%, again, that you mentioned. 60% of our students are going to charters in our district. We have 39 charters and or privates in our neighborhood. We only have 38 buildings, so we are chartered to death. You are correct, but I think if we don't compete in that zone, we're just going to be another chink in our armor. I'm hoping that if this school gets approved, that we'll actually be able to pull charter kids back to our system. And as I mentioned earlier, That's a personal mission of mine to put some more fences around charters so that we're competing on the same level. And so I just want to make sure that we're competitive when those families come, because they're coming.
Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay.
Nay.
And it passes 3-2. Let's move on to consent agenda.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items A through G.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so let's go to 8A, approve employee travel.
Sorry. Was there no electronic voting on that one?
Ms. Sheila did it for us.
Okay, thank you.
She's fast.
Just want to make sure. I move that the governing board approve all employee out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCCE.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this? No? Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 5 ayes. Wow. Let's go to 8B. I would make a motion that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve payroll voucher number 12 in the amount of $8,202,985.17 and payroll voucher number 13 in the amount of $8,375,253.12 and expense vouchers on the voucher summary sheet in the amount of $5,870,355.31 for the fiscal year of 2018-19.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
It passes with 1 abstention. 8C. Sorry, Ann.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, we just
Okay, are we good? I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 5 ayes. Oh, look at that. We're on the preview item.
Don't get too excited. We have 3 discussion items.
Yeah, well, you know, discussion can be lively.
And is this going to be Mrs. Moffett for us?
Good evening, President Ordway, governing board members. Tonight what we're bringing to you is policy CBA. CBA, as approved right now, is not an ASBA recommended governing board policy for us. There have been additional revisions made to it. Those revisions are under the area of personnel. And if you'll flip through the policy that's located in front of you, you'll see personnel is at the back of the policy. Our recommendation is that we change the date that we have been following over the last, I believe this will be our 4th cycle, could be our 5th cycle, where we put a list together for the governing board by February 15th. And this list is for all contracts in our district. This is for certified, exempt, and administrative. We find this date, or have found this date. We've had different configurations in ALS over these years, and each group has found this to be a very early and difficult date to put a list of people together for the governing board. Additionally, Human Resources works with administrators across all 38 campuses, and we work to confirm whether or not our certified names are prepared and ready to go forward to the governing board by February 15th. So our recommendation is that we push this date back to the month of March. I believe the date in front of you is March 15th instead. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't be able to give you that list earlier. It just means that we would be able to have that additional time. You'll also see in the governing board language that we are proposing that it still would require that you see that list before we issued contracts. So if the governing board decided that you would like to issue contracts earlier, as many districts do, sometimes we see them go out in February. If you chose to do that, or we followed past practice, maybe the last 2 years, we have pushed them out around the first, second week of March. We would still be able to do that. We would put a list together in advance. You'd be able to approve that list, and we could issue those contracts.
Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Ms. Tweedy.
I guess my question, it would be a concern too. So this means if somebody were going to be non-renewed, they're going to find out a month later.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. Actually, in current practice, what this does is it causes us to give the board a list that the public sees. And what we're giving you is a list of people that we know for sure we are going to be renewing. There could be many people that are on the list, exempt, administrative, or certified, that we are still in the process of deciding whether or not they're going to be renewed. But the public sees on that list that there is potentially a name missing, and so then it's in question. And we would like to try and give everybody at least that additional month, if possible, to make some of those decisions before that list goes public.
Okay, so
And additionally to that, in order for us to prepare a list by February 15th, sometimes, as you know, the governing board meeting is earlier than that. So if by February 15th, then we might need to put it on the agenda or the meeting before that. And that causes our administration to make that determination quite early, sometimes even in the month of December, and we're not even over half this mid-year mark.
I guess what my concern would be, and just based on some of the things that have happened, and I'm not trying to, if somebody were going to be non-renewed, I think they need as much notice as possible before all the other districts fill their positions. So it's not so much whether I get a list, I mean, which is the policy portion. So my curiosity about this is, what do you do behind the scenes? What is the notification process to somebody who may not be getting a contract? Because I don't want to see, I think, to be fair to those people, they need as much notice as possible so that as other districts are posting their positions, they have the opportunity to find a job.
For certified contracts, it's outlined in statute. We follow the processes for non-renewal for all certified staff members, and there are timelines associated with that. For exempt and administrative, the timeline is by April 15th. They must be notified whether or not the district is going to non-renew them. If they're not notified, then we are required to automatically renew.
But currently they get notified sooner because of the list you provide, right?
No. What the list that we provide to you is the list of people we are recommending for renewal.
Okay, but if you're not on the list, I think if
it's
you have
still
some
pending.
inference skills.
Not necessarily, and
No?
that's why we're proposing a later time, because February is a really early time to determine that. When legally April 15th is our timeline, because that is closer to the end of your contract.
I see what you're thinking. I'm using the same logic, though, in reverse. I actually want more time for them to prove that we can improve them versus pulling the trigger way too early in December. That's one of the things that I noticed when I first came here. I couldn't believe that date and asked, where did this come from? And then I got the story around it. And I understand your logic. That's good logic. From the administrator side, if I'm trying to help the employee improve, I want more time for them to demonstrate the skills that we're trying to produce from that employee. So it's the same concept, but in reverse. I think as a superintendent, I'm recommending that we move that date a month further, so I can have more time to help the employee reach that goal, those goals that they were trying to set. So that's the logic behind it. But your logic is correct as well.
But no, I hear what you're saying, but I guess what I'm saying, and I don't know if this is possible, if we were to change, I think not being on the list, if I weren't on a list like that, I think I would start looking for a job. And I think so the list does serve that function. I don't think it's the kindest way to serve that function because, like you said, everybody in the district. Right. So I'm just asking, could we have some kind of AMG where if you're not on an improvement plan, you're going to be on the list, or if they don't have because I do think you need to be fair to people, where they could say then, I don't think it's good for the culture of an organization for a bunch of people to run around and hope they're not on the list. Like, I think there should be some at least notification, even if it's not the list we're receiving, going on the back end, that we're looking for you to improve, or you may not be on this list, like some kind of a notification.
Darcy, I think Jenna or Ms. Moffett wants to explain something about that.
We are in complete agreement with you. The earlier we can notify and have these conversations, the better. This February 15th time frame that is in policy right now, that doesn't drive us in non-renewals. It doesn't drive our timeline of having those conversations with employees. There are many employees right now that are in the process of having these conversations. It really is more to do with putting it out for public review and having more time for that dialogue. We do notify early. We do follow all of those processes.
I guess my question is, if we change the timeline on this with a month, which I don't particularly have a problem with because it's the government versus management, I guess I would just want to know that something was formalized on the management end of things to make sure we're notifying people as early as possible, that they know the time frame, and that they also, if they decide that you guys can't work together, that they have time to find other. That's all I'm saying.
No, and we do that. So good point.
So, from what I'm hearing, the change in this policy does not change what you're already doing in terms of the management that Ms. Tweedy spoke about.
Let Ms. Darcy, let Jenny finish.
So if the board votes to approve the change in the policy, it doesn't change the current practice that you're already doing to notify employees and to help them improve, and it doesn't impact what you're currently doing, is what I'm saying, if I'm understanding that correctly.
As far as notification.
That is correct. What it does do for administrative, like ALS, principals working with assistant principals, directors working with all exempt employees, on that end, it does allow for a longer period of time of collaboration and review before it goes public. When it comes to a certified staff member, that date is not relevant. It is for you, and it is for us in issuing contracts, but statute outlines that, how we renew, non-renew, and notify.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. O'Brien?
Dr. Finch, does this change in date afford us the opportunity to potentially increase our retention rate?
I would agree. That's a different philosophical lens you're looking through. It's the same one I'm looking through. It's that concept of I want to give the employee one more chance. What can we do to help improve the employee and keep them around? If I have to tell them earlier, then they start unplugging. This is my 30th year in education, so I've seen how that notification can be negative, and so we want to keep the excitement. We want to keep the the chance for improvement longer. And Ms. Tweedy is correct that if you don't know them, notify them soon enough, then they can't shop around. So consequently, if we know this is not going to work out, we do have those conversations earlier, but and have here since I've been arrived as well. So, to Ms. Frank's point, it won't affect our practice, but it'll keep it out of the public until it's time. That's the logic.
Thank you, Dr. Finch.
Ms. Reed?
Just out of curiosity, how many contracts do we non-renew every year? I mean, can you give me a ballpark figure, an average?
I don't think I can off the top of my head. I could look it up for you and provide it in an update. I'd be worried. I'll try.
Okay.
Very few in the administrative world, and not all the time, not annually. And then on the certified side, we go through a 45-day notice process and non-renewal. Again, a handful within a year. So I'll get the exact numbers.
I was just
for you.
curious
It's
to
not
see
an extreme amount.
to see what demographic we were impacting. How many possible employees? Thank you.
I think if I could chime in here too, again, I like using the good to great philosophy. Often, if you can keep your employees that are already culturized, for lack of a better word, it's better and easier. We just need a spot. Maybe you need to be in a different spot. That's why I want more time to work with this employee. It's very possible that you might work better at a middle school or an elementary or a high school, different than the chair that you're currently sitting in. So time is to my advantage to keep the employee. That's what the logic behind it. So,
Mrs. O'Brien? Got anything else? Anybody else? Okay, so any more things that you process, just send to Dr. Finch, and then we'll get answers in a Friday update or before that. So thank you. That'll move us to discussion items. Who's doing, Dr. Finch, who's taking the PLC calendar survey results? Oh,
I think
look at
Dr.
there.
Galligan's going
There's
to
Scott.
take the first
Okay.
stab at it.
Good evening, President Ordway, members of the governing board. This first discussion item has a real short presentation associated with it. As I believe everybody knows, we administered an additional early release survey in the last 3 weeks of December. We released this to all of our stakeholders, administered to all of our stakeholders, and it basically had one question when asking them which day of the week they would prefer to have the early release in next year's school calendar. So what I have here are some results by stakeholder group, and then the very last chart I'll show you will be the rolled up total results. You can see all the colors should be consistent. So that big blue area is a Friday, and this is the parents' results. Down in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the end count for the responses on these surveys also. So over 4,500 parents responded, overwhelmingly preferring Friday. Classified staff, 547 responses with, I'm going to call that overwhelming also, results preferring Friday. A little more on Wednesday also in the green area than the parents. On the certified, it dropped a little bit more, but still the majority of the 1,342 certified staff members said Friday, and the green area for Wednesday grew a little bit more also. Administrators, these are administrators at schools, 43 of them responded, and this is the first group where you see that they would prefer Wednesday as opposed to Friday, and the Friday, though, is the second largest group there, 8 out of that 43. And so this is exempt staff, which included basically, include all exempt staff that weren't administrators, so at school and district office, et cetera. We had 43 of them respond, and they said Wednesday at 65% rate also, and then Friday or Monday, the other two. So if you roll them all together, you can see that all stakeholders, 6,500 plus responses, 76% of them or 4,940 said they would prefer Friday, with the next largest group being Wednesday, but at all the way down at 15%. So just some thoughts we've had at this. Cabinet just saw these results yesterday. So some of the thoughts we had that although Friday is preferred by parents and staff, we believe data and the preponderance of research does not support Friday as the best day. We believe absenteeism will be higher on Fridays for both students and staff than they would have been on Wednesday. However, we think it's important to listen to input from our stakeholders, from all the groups of our stakeholders, parents, community, and staff.
That was awesome. Anybody have any comments? Mrs. Tweedy? Well, I couldn't see if Jenny had her hand raised too. But yeah.
Could you go back? It looked like the two graphs for admin and exempt were identical, like the same number of votes and the same answers.
Close. 29 administrators said Friday 20. Can I read that? Say 25 or 28. So.
The exempt one and then the admin one both said there were 43 respondents. Now go to the exempt. Do they have the same exact percentages too?
No.
No, they do not.
Okay. Thank you.
Because of Tuesday choice there.
Ms. Frank?
So I guess this is part of the discussion and be more directed towards Dr. Finch than Dr. Smith, so you're a bit off the hook.
Thank you.
But stay tuned. So when you say it's important to listen, I'm reading this and it sounds like the plan is to keep the early release day on Wednesday. What's your plan?
Fancy, you should ask. No, thanks for that lead into. I personally believe that that we have the data. I don't know if Dr. Scott actually has the data or not on our staff and student data for attendance, but it doesn't support it, and the research doesn't support it that I've submitted to you as well. But I think it's important that we listen to our customers, and so that is something we're going to be doing. Here's the quandary in my head. It's kind of like carrots and peas, vegetables. We know they're good for us, but sometimes kids don't like them. So as parents, we have to go and do what's best for the student. But in this case, we have parents involved here, community members, and they're saying this is more convenient for me. And so we don't want it to negatively impact too bad our approach. So it's going to be my recommendation that we move it to Friday and do a 2-year pilot and check our data again to see how bad it is influencing our learning there. If it's right now we have current data, and so if we can run a benchmark and compare it to our past track record for Fridays, then we'll know if it's negatively impacted. So I'm going to be moving it to Friday. To answer your question.
So it's kind of interesting. One of the projects I'm doing at work right now is with the Phoenix After School Centers. So we are going to be doing after school programs, and I'll tie this back to this discussion, don't worry, in a variety of, Creighton, Balls, Phoenix L, a lot of different districts. And so, and looking at their schedule, as we were scheduling our classroom visits, we had to look at where the early release days were. And it's all over the map. There's Tuesday, there's Wednesday, there's Thursday, there's Friday. It just varies a lot from district to district. It was quite a challenge for us in doing our schedule. I think it's really important. I'm very happy to hear that you are going to do a 2-year pilot on the Friday, because I think looking at how all these other districts do every day of the week, I think it's really, really important that we listen to our parents. I've received a lot of feedback from parents saying it's going to create a hardship for me with my job. Just lots of very valid reasons, and looking at the overwhelming percentage of staff and parents who felt Friday was the better day. I do think it's extremely important that we not just listen to them, but we also honor that and do a 2-year trial. So I am pleased to hear that that is the plan going forward.
Dr. Finch, when you talked about peas and carrots being good for us, parents sometimes don't, we don't want to do that. So we will also have to then instill something with our staff that because we have an early release day doesn't mean it's time for them to be absent, because part of what you had in there, the negative parts, was the absenteeism of students and staff. So I think all of us need to have an adjustment for that, not just the parents. But let's face it, the parents bring us the kids, the reason the kids come, or the reason we have employees because our kids come. So convenience of parents, as we all know, is very important, such as open enrolling. Sometimes we don't do it because it's more convenient to put you on the bus. So I just want to make sure that we know that all of us have to eat peas and carrots sometimes. So.
Yeah, thanks. I think also too, the quality is super important. So we have to make sure. I know Maria and I have talked about the quality of the PD to make sure that that staff, when they miss it, they feel like they missed out. So that's on us as administrators to make sure that we're having the quality there, and that we're moving the academic needle, and it has a purpose. And so we think that will impact the staff side of it. Parents can pull their students. We know that. So we'll watch it after a couple of years, and then I'll come back to you and say the data's the same. Let's keep going. Or this is not working. This went sideways. We now have a 30% or whatever, some crazy number that we need to change, and then we'll bring it back and reevaluate.
So then we're prepared to bring this back at the next board meeting?
I think it's a green light. It's an administrative decision in my mind. You've given me the permission to do that, so.
I thought that we voted on a specific date. I thought we voted on the date, which is why we're reversing.
Oh, okay.
Or we're thinking about reversing.
The original motion did include
a date,
Wednesday
okay.
as the early release day.
If you want to do that,
I think just
that'd
to make
be fine.
sure we've crossed our I's and dotted our I's, crossed our T's. But
And
I
J's.
also would like to thank you, Dr. Finch, and Cabinet for the additional work that you've done. I know that this was a little bit of a unexpected hiccup, but thank you for going the extra mile and taking that community input. Appreciate it.
Well, we probably can't. Then, if we're going to be voting on it, do we need an extra meeting to do that, or can we vote now? I think it has to be.
We can't vote tonight. We have to put it on the next
what
one.
we'll do is we probably won't announce it, but obviously the word will spread. But we won't actually do any formal marketing until we get a formal vote, because just in case it goes sideways again. So we'll wait till next time we get back together and vote on the day.
You should be able to just put it on the next agenda as an action item.
I agree. Yep. Consent agenda might work as well.
Well, I guess we can talk about it at agenda review and figure that out.
And if there are any more questions or data that you want to see between now and then, just email me. I think Dr. Scott also had some other data. Yes, no? What the calendar might look like?
Yes, President Orwell, members of the governing board, Dr. Finch. So you presented this slide. And I guess in Cabinet we believed it was a decision we could make, but we will bring it back now. So this next slide is a little bit premature, but this is what the calendar would look like. I know it's really hard to see. We do have copies of it for you. I just want to emphasize, all we've done is move the Wednesdays to Fridays. We've maintained all the other components that we said we would with the calendar. For example, not having an early release Friday if there's already a day in that week that we don't have school, and not having any early release days in the month of April or during testing. So that's just for your edification, which will become true fact when we vote on it.
And that would have been the same as when we had the Wednesdays, though, right? It's not any
Totally.
different than the day.
Yes, there are no differences.
And that's actually how we think it'll have less mistakes than the first round, because we'll actually put in the calendars right next to each other.
Sure.
How are you dealing with parent-teacher conference? Because that was a concern.
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, since parent-teacher conferences are days where they're already missing school, we would not have early release in that week. It's just like if there was a holiday on a Monday, we would not have early release in that week. If we have another day during the week where they're either being released or not coming to school, we don't have early release that week. For example, the week of October, what is that, 14th, where their parent-teacher conferences on the 17th and 18th, that week does not have early release time.
But you would have early release on the 17th and 18th to accommodate time for the parent-teacher conferences.
That's correct.
So it would be the same as current practice.
Yes,
with that.
and
Anything
that's a
different
great
about the
point.
time?
Pardon? Pardon?
President Ordway, Ms. Frank, Ms. Tweedy, we are right now continuing to determine, based on instructional minutes, if we can add an early release Wednesday prior to the Thursday and Friday for K-8. We have the cushion in instructional minutes at those levels. We do not have that cushion in instructional minutes at high school. Dr. Zerbach has been working with our high school principals just to see if that would pose a problem, and as soon as we have that information, we'll formally bring to you what we intend to do to support parent-teacher conferences for our teachers at K-8 mainly.
Thank you, Dr. Galligan.
So everyone can send what you need to Dr. Finch, and then we'll have it back. So our next is employee travel plan.
I thought under the PLC item, were you going to discuss the PLC coaches and what we've been seeing and clarify that for us?
I think we should do that.
That doesn't have anything to
Yeah,
do
it doesn't
with
have
this
anything to do
agenda
with this.
item. Doesn't have anything to do with this agenda item.
That's true, it doesn't. But
This is simply changing the date and the survey. It has nothing to do with that, so we'd be off agenda if we discussed that right now. Right, on the survey, we're not talking about employees, employment, or adding anything, so we'd be off topic. So we're going to move to the next one.
We can include those questions in the Friday update.
Absolutely.
And get you information that you're interested in. But yep.
Employee travel plan?
I wanted to have you look at one more time. There was some miscommunication from the last time. Miss Tweedy wanted to know. I think Miss Fisher actually raised it about title being a grant concept, or somebody did. Okay, Miss Tweedy talked about it, and so we reworded it, but it sounds like we didn't capture what we're looking for. So if there's any more feedback on that, what you're thinking or wording that we could change to capture what you were after there, that would be appreciated.
Go ahead. I don't know what you're talking about.
My concern was when they sent the travel plan, my concern was that on the travel plan that we were reducing our travel. That was the point of the travel plan. And then he said 20%. But then if you read the plan, it says exceptions, like they won't be counted against the travel budget, would be title funds, which would include all Title I and Title II. How much money is Title I and Title II funds for the district?
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, the total grant?
For Title I and Title
The
II.
total amount that we spend on travel in those grants.
Now, I'm just saying in general, how much is Title I and Title II?
Title I's, I don't know. It's several $1 million.
Yeah, and Title II, right? So if we had several $1 million they could spend and not count it against the travel budget, I don't think we would be accomplishing our goal of even having a travel budget. So I think that any title travel should be counted against the travel budget, not excluded from
That was the original
travel
intention, and that's how we wrote it last time. But there was some discussion of.
Well, the discussion was when people write a grant specifically for travel, or like ASU says, I'll pay for so many teachers to go here.
Do you know how we could word it so we would capture what you're after there?
We could just count all travel against the travel budget if that makes it easier for Mr. Miglarino. We were trying to.
So how would we separate the travel for the professional development that's needed to satisfy the requirements of a grant?
Right.
So we're going to count that against a travel plan?
So like a requirement.
Yeah, I think the thought at the last discussion was that, again, as Ms. Tweedy mentioned, if someone wrote a grant specifically to attend a conference or if someone is an officer in a national organization and that organization says we are paying for your travel, that would be exempt from the travel budget. That's not costing the district anything.
Okay.
Someone wrote a grant that specifically to go to a conference. So I'm not sure how that could be worded, but we could work on that.
We're not required to travel with title funds. We can use it for PD. We
There
don't have to travel.
are, Dr. Galligan, are there not specific grants and federal monies that we get that require us to travel for training?
President Orway, Ms. Tweedy, there are, but I couldn't tell you how many, if it's just a few, and it really truly is grant related and must meet some of the requirements of various grants. We can certainly look into that and get a ballpark for you if that would be beneficial.
How about this? How about you give me your ideas via email on how to word it or what exceptions you're after, and then we'll craft it again and bring it back at the next meeting. There's no specific timeline on this concept anyway. It's one that we've been working on and trying to hone down to exactly what we're trying to
I
do.
think we could work on the wording. Send you
Okay.
something and
Send me
take
some
another
ideas.
look at it if
Okay.
that is acceptable to other board members.
All right, that sounds good. So we'll send you more words.
Thank you.
Now we can move to transportation. Is that you, Dr. Finch and Jim?
Yeah, I guess it was brought up by a board member that they would like to discuss particular to what Marshall was referring to. Some of the concepts or some of the ideas that we're doing around transportation and recruiting and retaining bus drivers and kind of what's happening, what's the latest news. And so we are doing many things, but maybe, I don't know if Ms. Moffett or Mr. Miglerino or who wants to jump in as far as what we're doing related to bus drivers, but maybe there's any questions that board members had around this topic we're ready to take a stab at. If not, we can gather information and we get the next time.
Are there any new programs we have out there? Are we soliciting like FedUps drivers, as in Federal Express and UPS drivers that are retired? I mean, what are we looking for? Split shifts, or have we gone down any of those paths yet?
President Ordway, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we did provide in the board docs item. There are some additional there's some additional content in there regarding our efforts related to transportation issues, especially filling vacancies, and we do have a number of vacancies. The last page of that content has our recruitment strategies that we have helped, or that we have implemented, and I wanted to give recognition to Mr. Militano. He has actually helped suggest some of these things, and I'll just cover those briefly. So we've implemented van drivers, so it's a lower tier, and we do transport some students in vans. We are still able to qualify for reimbursement for those miles. We do this in a very limited fashion for the specific students. We have temporary driver positions. We've created 5 of those temporary driver positions to be able to fill with even other Deer Valley employees. So we no longer post just a AM and PM route combined. We'll split that route to be able to find somebody that might, for example, we have crews that start at noon and work till 10 o'clock at night, and they could run an AM route for us. It would be in excess of 40 hours, so we'd be paying a premium due to Department of Labor requirements for paying them overtime. But we much rather pay a premium to our employees than to pay a premium to a contracted service agency. We do also share driver positions with one neighboring school district because they have a different calendar than we have. So in order to be able to fill some vacancies on specific days where they may not be working, we reciprocate that so they could work for us when we're in session and they're not, and likewise we could do the same for them when we're not in session. We've been to several job fairs and haven't had great success. I've hosted our own job fairs, but even one candidate helps us immensely. That's how great the need is. We've been doing advertising in several areas. We've tried to find where there's a good match between candidates and the job itself, so church bulletins, online posting sites, things of that nature, because the demographic of a current bus driver that we've had great success happens to be those that might be looking for a second career or be retired. They seem to be some of the most dependable bus drivers for us of late. And then we're also looking at various ways to address compensation, but it's interesting to note of the 51 bus drivers that have left us over the last year and a half, only one of them left and reported it was in lieu of a higher salary from a competitor. So we're looking at this, but I will also echo Mr. Militano's concern about the level of urgency that needs to be expressed to do something to try and address this need, because it is we can't overstate the need that we have for additional bus drivers. It is affecting our schools. It is affecting what options students have available to them, and it's certainly affecting our transportation staff.
Jim, in the state of Arizona, or at least in Maricopa County, is there any kind of sharing of ideas with? We're not the only one with the problem, so is there maybe a think tank or something that maybe transportation has going throughout the county?
President Ordway, I know that our director has been in contact with the other transportation directors, especially our neighboring schools. Some of which, we have shared drivers with other schools, other school districts, and I'm not saying that in a positive light. We have traded bus drivers is probably a better way to state that. But we have been in communication with them. But even those that are paying a higher salary have vacancies, a considerable number of vacancies. So this is not a problem that's unique to Deer Valley, but it is a concern that all school districts are having in trying to fill this. And I think it's stems from, at least in part, from the increase in minimum wage. So there's a great deal of responsibility to be a bus driver. There are certain credentials that are required to even be a bus driver. You're subjected to additional testing throughout your career as a bus driver. And when there's no difference in the compensation from any other job because of minimum wage increasing, it's difficult to try and compel somebody to want to have those additional responsibilities.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Frank.
So thank you for presenting this information, compiling all this information. I know Ms. Tweedy and I both asked about it at the last agenda review. I would like to urge my fellow board members as we move into looking at budget and salaries. What jumps out at me from this table, and granted only one person in the survey said salary was a reason. 10 people changing careers, salary could be a part of that. But it does jump out at me, we pay, our starting minimum and maximum is less than any other of the other districts, and we have double the number of vacancies compared to, say, Dysart, so I do think this is really something we need to look at, and it needs to be a priority. I'm very concerned about the safety. Mr. Militano spoke about the problems with kindergarten students in particular. And so I would just urge my fellow board members that we need to make this a priority as we look at budget and salary in the coming months. I'd also like to thank Mr. Militano for coming to speak to us and for his years of service in Deer Valley. I understand today was your last day.
Yesterday was his last day.
And you will be missed, but we will be calling you to Uber us to the next board meeting, so you're not off the hook for coming to board meetings.
Dr. Finch, did you want to add to this?
Mr. Migliano is on the right trail. I meet with the NEVIC superintendents, which are all our neighbors, small size and large size, and they have the same issues we do. One of the negatives of our salary comparison is we pay for days, 10 more days in the contract. So it kind of messes the numbers up when you're trying to do apples to oranges or apples to apples. So I think, and I've talked with, throwing this out there with leadership, the union leadership, about making it apples to apples. But it's so hard to explain to people that turning days into dollars and then cutting the days, sometimes it doesn't add up. And so that is something that we're arm wrestling over now. But I would like to be able to say the charts were exactly the same based on the same data. So that's just one of my thoughts.
So pay them more and give them the days, then we'd really be competitive.
Now you're onto something.
Ms. Tweedy?
Mr. Migliano, I just want to know if, because I heard something, so I just want to know if it's a rumor or not a rumor so you could clear it up. Is there discussion of privatizing our transportation?
President Ordway, Ms. Tweedy, not that I'm working on. I will say that we have outsourced almost all extracurricular activities, not to privatize our transportation department, but out of necessity due to the lack of drivers that we have. So
when I heard that rumor, I was kind of like, gracious, we just approved buying all these buses and we're privatizing.
Yeah.
I was having some.
One of the problems with privatizing is if you can't go back. It might save you money in the short term, but the iron that you buy, the buses that you buy, eventually all are transferred over to the company that is using it. You sell it to them or whatever, but it's a road that you can't return from. So I don't recommend it. I've actually been in my ISD. There's several of my districts did do that, and the negative was when they got financially stable or when the market stabilized and the drivers were more plentiful. Then it took so much expense for them to get back into business. They had to bond to get back into business, and so I don't recommend it.
I actually agree with you. I just heard the rumors.
Yeah,
and I wanted
false
to
rumor.
clear it up.
False rumor. It's not. It doesn't agree with my philosophy.
I don't want to have to explain that one to the air quality department.
Yep, it would be disagreement with my philosophy. Never, although it's never say never. If it gets too dire where we can't even move a bus, then that'll be obviously option L. But I think there's many things we can do before then.
Okay, so I guess we're done with that, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. You're sitting so close I couldn't see you raise your hand.
It's quite all right, not a problem. The calendar days count. So Deer Valley shows 206 days. So are we? But you say we're paying more days than other districts. Is that because we're paying for holidays, or help me out understand that,
That's
Mr.
Mr.
Migliano,
Migliano.
Dr. Finch, whoever.
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, yeah, so we actually are paying for days during the calendar that we don't have them drive. So they're intersession days, winter break, spring break, holidays, days like that. So what that chart shows you is norming their starting minimum salary, assuming a 7-hour day, and what that would relate to in an annual salary compensation for that employee. And so even though we show the lowest hourly rate in terms of total dollars expended for the same 7-hour driver, we are not the lowest. So that is intended to norm that. The 206 days is because that is how the language is written in our classified manual for all of our support staff. So if we were to change the number of days, we would have to carve out the bus drivers or do that for all classified employees, adjust their salary, and change the number of days.
And do other districts pay for the winter break or non-driving days? Are we the only one that does that?
You can see that there's a varying number of days. So typically they have a set number of days that they will pay for in an identified calendar. But you can tell it's not uniform. Again, you'd be judging that against a 180-day school calendar for most of those schools.
Okay. Is this something that is being discussed in NST?
I can answer that question. Yes, it is.
And the options being discussed, are they just the ones that are down below the recruitment strategies, or are there, or not recruitment strategies, sorry, are we talking about actual pay in NST for them?
President Ordway, Ms. O'Brien, yes, we are talking about a differentiated pay, our salary increase for the bus drivers specifically. So different from the rest of the employees that might be also in the same employee group under the heading of classified employees.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for bringing this information to us, and thank you, Mr. Militano, for coming tonight and speaking.
Anyone else? Nope. All right, well, that was good discussion. So next is future meeting dates and events, which we can all look at, and then I'll make a motion to adjourn our meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned.